Hey, and good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Weather Nerds YouTube channel. I'm your humble host, meteorologist Greg Majeski here, your no-nonsense, straightforward weather guy. You know, we get enough hype out there in social media. You don't need that. All you need is the facts, right? So you can make informed decisions. And that's what we try to do here. And again, welcome aboard. If you're coming to this live broadcast after the fact, if you please like to consider subscribing to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so when I do these updates or we do live events, you can be alerted on when we do these. And I do appreciate you guys helping our little humble channel out. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the weather. Get you ready for the weekend. Are you ready for the weekend? I'm ready for the weekend. Let's go ahead and get into all this here for today. I want to point out yesterday's highs and lows, and they were definitely out into Tulsa, Arizona. That's, of course, out in the Mojave Desert. 108 yesterday, and our cold spot was McKay, Idaho at 20 degrees. Those were our highs and lows out there. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this in studio mode here so I can do a little bit of writing and do a little talking and get you guys moving on here for today. Of course, we got a little wet here along the eastern seaboard. We got a frontal system in here, a little bit cloudy. Got some thunderstorms down here in the Gulf. We're going to show you that here in a second. We got the monsoon moisture coming up in here. We got some thunderstorms down here in Arizona. They had some severe weather there yesterday. Probably going to see it again here for today. And it's going to be continued warm and dry here in the middle of the country going through the weekend. So I wish I had better news for you there. Very warm and above normal temperatures are going to continue to plague us going into October. Although there are some hints on the European. Maybe we see some changes, at least along the east, going in the long range. But again, we got to look for model trends. But I'll show you that here in just a second. Okay, let's go look at the weather map here for this morning. Again, we got that boundary here along the eastern seaboard. This is not really going to go much of anywhere. We got to wait till what's going on out in the tropics, which is going to be giving us forecasters headaches and nightmares all weekend. We got to deal with a very, very complicated setup because we're dealing with not one but two different systems. And the Carolina coast, of course, all our eyes are going to be on that. Again, I want to be very clear. Even if we do get a tropical system there on the coast, the way it's looking as of today, on this Friday, I'm not expecting a major hurricane to be coming into, say, Charleston or something like that. I'm not talking about a Hugo type thing. All right, maybe a minimal hurricane, maybe, but tropical storm. But the risk for flooding along the coastal areas is fairly high. I'll show you why that's a possibility, at least on the model data here in just a second. We'll get into all that for you here. Again, we're getting some pretty good rains down there along the Gulf Coast. A bit of a rainy, damp day along Panama City Beach, down from Pensacola all the way down. A bit stormy there as this rain moving in down that way. My buddy Chris Smith down there in Panama City, weather down there. He's getting ready to launch his platform on October 1st. He's going to be dealing with a lot of rain and wet weather down that way here for today. But elsewhere across the nation, we're dealing with some foggy conditions here across the Northeast and the Midwest. And we got, of course, got our flash flood watches out here in Arizona. That'll continue to be a problem with localized flooding with that monsoon moisture, that moisture coming in out of the Pacific. That'll be problematic here for today. All right, let's go ahead and get into the tropics. We've got plenty to talk about. Let's get into all that here. Again, we've got Gabrielle's gone. It's became extraterrestrial. It's gone by the Azores. Of course, here's Humberto, now a hurricane, and I expect a rapid intensification on the storm. I'm glad to see that the Hurricane Center saw what I was seeing. I thought we would see not only a Cat 3, but a Cat 4, but they are expecting that. I'll show you that in a second. Here is the fly in the ointment system. It's still not a storm. You might be asking, why is it not a storm yet? It's been 90% for a little while. Its proximity to land has been a problem. But as soon as it pulls away, starts moving up into the Bahamas, we'll see we'll start seeing this thing start to develop again. Not expecting a big major storm with that particular system. Humberto will be the stronger of the two. All right, so here goes the Humberto path right now. Now Category 1, winds of 75 miles per hour. Expected to become a Cat 3 by tomorrow. If it follows a similar path that we saw with Aaron with these compact type systems, it could potentially get stronger than that. They do take it up to 130 miles per hour winds by Sunday, Cat 4. Wouldn't shock me if it gets a little higher than 130. Will it go to Cat 5 like Aaron? I don't know. That's got to be almost a perfect setup for that. But wouldn't shock me if it got a little stronger than 130. Wouldn't shock me the least. Now, the good news is once this moves up here toward the north, you notice it does weaken a little bit in here because of probably wind shear becomes a little more problematic. And the water temperatures may be a little bit cooler as further north it goes, obviously. But right now it's in some very nice warm water. It's at 85, 86 degrees in that area. And some pretty good optimal fuel there for it to kind of feed off here. All right, so let's go take a look at the satellite imagery. I do have it on the water vapor once again. It really helps me kind of illustrate, tell the story here. Obviously, we've got this big trough here in the east. That's our magnet that's going to be pulling both our systems up. Okay, so here is our hurricane. Here is what will become Imelda. There is some ridging. There's some high pressure going over there. And high pressure over the top of a hurricane is great. What that allows is for the heat at the surface to come up through the middle and evacuate out the top. It's a big chimney and a big heat engine that's working very well and should be able to strengthen pretty rapidly. Again, Humberto is a fairly compact storm. Hurricane force wind's only gone about like 15, 20 miles from the center. So it's pretty tight. So as this thing gets moving, it's gonna strengthen quite rapidly into that warm water. All right. Now, we've got a couple things we're kind of watching here. All right, this thing's going to take off first. The trough's going to pull on it first. This is a little bit further off to the west, so this is moving very slowly. This one's going to take off. Now, the problem here is we got two different scenarios. As I mentioned yesterday, it's still there in the cards. But the added caveat here now is that the European wants to go ahead and stall this thing off the coast there for a little while and then move it in. All right, there's still a possibility it may get pulled back out by Humberto once it gets up to this position. But again, still some unknowns there. Okay, so something we're going to watch closely. Here is the Ascens ensemble. That's the European ensemble. Different model runs here. As you can kind of see, the storm getting up here, pulls up to the Carolina coast, maybe makes a landfall. You know, Humberto does a nice little hook out there, pulls on out to sea. So I'm not worried about Humberto. It's going to be a major hurricane, but not anything we have to worry about. It's going to be kicking up a lot of surf. There's going to be some rip current problems from Florida all the way up the eastern seaboard with this, just like we saw with Aaron earlier in the year. But that'll be the problem. But the big problem I'm a little concerned is that if this storm gets off the coast here and stalls, well, we could see some serious flooding, say, from Myrtle Beach down toward Charleston to watch. But again, a lot of unknowns. We got to watch through the weekend. Once the system gets organized and we get an actual honest-to-God core for the models to track on, it'll do a better job. Now, I do know that the office, like for example in Atlanta, Peachtree City, are doing additional balloon launches to help with the data here. They're doing it up the eastern seaboard to kind of get that idea with what the environment is going to be here across the southeast for the system. So that'll get into the model data as well. That'll help a little bit. All right. So again, we still got a couple of solutions. Again, this is the hurricane models here. The latest, the 6Z run here. 12Z should be out here shortly. Notice it's taking it right here. There's still a couple of them that take it off and do a right turn and take it out. Just a couple, but a lot of them are bringing it up here up to the Carolina coast and some bringing them inland here as we go over into next week. All right. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into the severe weather risk here for today. We're going to talk about that through the weekend where the thunderstorm threat is, and then we'll break down your model data here for you and get you on your way. So, all right. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let me get this up for us real quick. Here we go. And let's go take a look at the thunderstorm threat today. Again, the severe weather risk is going to be here in the southwest, Arizona once again. That's where we had the warnings yesterday, probably once again. General thunderstorm threat here across the southeast, and of course, mostly out here in the west. So that is for your Friday. And then through the weekend, we're not seeing much of anything, just a general thunderstorm threat across the southwest and the southeast, of course, subject to change from the Storm Prediction Center. And going into your Sunday as well, a general thunderstorm out in the west and across the southeast. That'll continue going into Sunday as well. How about the excessive rainfall issues there? That's something we like to keep a watchful eye on here. Again, looking across Arizona and into New Mexico, and a little bit here into the Carolinas as well. Notice that we got here from Virginia up to South Carolina and into North Carolina. Could see some localized flooding into that zone as well here for your Friday. Going into your day two. Again, we'll shift this over to New Mexico and still looking at the Carolinas with some heavy rain threats there as well. And that's for Saturday. And then for Sunday, we'll hold it right along the coast here. And I'll tell you, this next week, especially going to Tuesday, Wednesday, we must see a lot of yellow here, or reds, I should say, if what the European model shows it comes true. We'll see a lot of flooding potential there. And you still see some out there in New Mexico and parts of the western Panhandle, Texas, not Panhandle, Texas, western Texas here as well going in towards Sunday. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at your model data here. All right, so we're going to take you through, we're first going to look at the NAM, the intermediate model here, going to take you through, basically get you through the weekend. All right, so we're going to have some wet weather here across the eastern seaboard here. We're going to watch our system here. Here's our eyes of what should be Imelda here going into Sunday here. Let me turn my clock back on. I reset it and I forgot to turn my clock back on. That's not really nice, is it? All right, so there's the clock up there toward the right. And again, you can see the rains come through the mid-Atlantic on Saturday and clearing on Sunday. Northeast looking pretty good. High Plains looking pretty good. Wet out here in the west, obviously Arizona and New Mexico with daytime heating. And we have some rain coming into the northwest. And that's going to be a sign of some very wet weather here along the eastern seaboard here going over the next 7 days. It's going to get a west coast. I said east. West coast is going to get a little wet here going into next week. But unsettled across the southeast. For Saturday. Sunday's looking a little bit better across the southeast as this little disturbance kind of rides up toward the north, looking better there going into Sunday there. And then, of course, here is what will be Imelda there off into the Bahamas there going into Sunday. All right, so here's your rainfall. Here's where the wet weather is going to be. Again, we're talking the mid-Atlantic, the southeast. We've got the Four Corners area out here and Arizona and New Mexico. And we're starting to get that rain into the northwest. But a lot of the Intermountain region looks pretty dry. Middle of the country, nice and dry. A few showers into the northeast. But again, that's your main rain threats of the mid-Atlantic, southeast, Florida, and of course the southwest. That's going into Sunday afternoon by 2 o'clock. That's where your hot spots. So it looks like a lot of big part of the country looking pretty good here for the weekend. All right, so here we go with our temperatures. It is going to be unusually warm here. Again, we're at the end of September. We shouldn't be seeing upper 80s here across South Dakota, but we're seeing a lot of 80s up here when it shouldn't be. It should be cooling back off into the 70s this time of year. So we're going to continue with above normal temperatures in the middle of the country. Not bad across New England, a little warmer in the southeast. Let's go for your morning lows on Saturday. And looking at 7, 8 o'clock here, we get the 7 there. 40s, 50s in the Intermountain region. Really a lot of the country pretty warm. We're not seeing any cold threats coming, so no 30s, anything like that. So above normal temperatures should kind of linger into next week. We might see a little bit of a wedge set up across the East Coast going into next week. That's typical when you get a tropical system that kind of move off the eastern seaboard there. And then daytime highs on your Saturday. Again, it cools off a little bit here across the plains. Got a little bit of a weak frontal boundary right through here, but still seeing 70s. So look at that. We're getting into the middle 80s here across Illinois, above normal temperatures there. Still looking at some 90s across Texas, the Valley region in California looking a little warm, but really no real big cool down here across a big portion of the country. And then we'll go into your Sunday morning here as well. Let's go into Sunday morning here. Sunday we're looking at, again, some cooler weather across the high plains a little bit. Seems the 40s at least. That's good. And then, but still looking mild across the southeast, New England, and fairly mild out in the west as well. So not looking all that bad there. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at your climate outlook here as we get out this. Let's go look at your European model. One thing, getting ahead of myself here. European model here. Again, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be seeing basically how this storm system is going to be a little bit of a pain. I'm going to tell you right now, it is going to be a little bit of a pain because of the fact that we might see a stall situation here. All right, so I want to be very clear on this. I'm going to back this up, and I want you to watch that southeastern portion here as we're going to be seeing this thing kind of come up. So this is the overnight European model. Watch there to the south. It comes up here. This goes into Tuesday. Notice where it is by Tuesday. Sitting right off the Carolina coast here. Look at this big, huge ridge up here. Got that trough going to get a little bit rainy and stormy out on the west coast. But watch what happens here from Tuesday through Thursday. Humberto is going to take off. It takes off. And Imelda just kind of sits there for a few days. So that could be a flooding problem on the coastal areas. And it finally moves on into Georgia going into next Saturday. So again, that's just one solution, but it cools on out, gets it there, and then this kind of lingers. And then if I take this all the way out, I do want to show this. Look at that big trough there at the end there. Boom. That, of course, that goes to the 9th and 10th of October. I'll be watching closely to see if that is consistent. Again, this is very long range. Anything beyond 7 days is a little bit of an extrapolation. But we've been kind of stuck in this pattern for a little while. It wouldn't shock me to see by the time we get toward the middle of October, we start seeing a little more of a progressive pattern start to return here. But we'll see. If that happens, that means we maybe see a cool down here in the east. We will see a brief cool down, but this is more of a substantial. I'll give you an idea. If this happens out true going in for New England, we're talking about highs in the 40s. That kind of thing, 40s to 50s up there. So that would be a significant cool down if that was to happen. So a little bit early. We'll watch that closely for you here. All right, so look at the loop here. This is the European model again. You see that storm is going to sit there, come up out of the south, comes on in there, and it just kind of sits there for a little while. It's going to sit there, kind of camp out, kind of move on in. It's going to get a little stormy, a little wet out here on the West Coast. Again, you see the onshore flow coming to Washington State, Oregon, and into California. You're going to get some decent rains out there as we go through the next 7 days. But the middle of the country, staying warm, staying with above normal temperatures, limited rain chances there to worry about. Looking at your European 7-day total, obviously the southeast and the west coast. West coast is going to stay active with the rain from Washington State down to Northern California. Monsoonal moisture across the Intermountain region there. Fairly dry here in the middle of the country and a big bullseye here in the southeast. Again, this is concerning, but again, it's got to stall. But you're looking at, 15-inch rainfall totals up in here from Charleston up to Myrtle Beach. And look at this one out here, 23 inches of rain out offshore. Ouch. That's assuming it just kind of sits there. So we'll watch this closely. Make sure it could stall offshore and rain all at once, but we don't want to have a situation where it moves inland and dumps that kind of rain. Obviously, we remember Helene. That's on everybody's minds. Again, this is not a Helene. It's not. I'm not expecting this to be maybe a minimal hurricane at best. I think a strong tropical storm. I think just looking at what I'm currently seeing on this Friday with the model data. All right, now we can go and get into the climate outlook here again. In the wake of these storms, once these go by, we'll get a brief cool down here along the eastern seaboard. So it's either normal or slightly below normal there along the east coast. Very warm here in the middle of the country, and that goes from again, the 1st through the 5th, and then once we go a little bit deeper, the 3rd through the 9th, the whole country once again is warm again. However, the caveat, remember there on the 10th, we were hinting at maybe a cool down there in the east. We'll watch closely, see at the afternoon run is showing that, and tomorrow's run showing that, see if that is a trend. Maybe we start seeing some changes on the climate outlook here. Precipitation-wise, we're looking at below normal precipitation here across New England, and we're here to the middle of the country. Obviously, a little wet here along the southeast coast for those tropical systems, and out here into the west as well. And then as far as the 8 to 14 day, going out the 3rd to the 9th, still looking at some dry pockets there from New England back here toward the south central U.S. Intermountain region, and maybe a little wetness here across the southeast and across the northwest. So that's what we're looking at out there for today. Anyway, so looks like, again, still some unknowns out there for the weekend, watching what goes on with those two tropical systems. Humberto, don't worry yourself about that. That's going to become a big hurricane, but it's going to stay out to sea. Its overall strength and path will have an impact on what will become a melda. Will have an issue. Those across the southeast coast need to be prepared for a tropical system. Again, not a major storm, but if this thing stalls on the coast, that's a big headache. That could cause some coastal flooding problems, not only beach erosion, but also heavy rain and some flooding along the coastal areas there that we'll have to watch. And then if it moves inland, hopefully it doesn't stall there for any length of time, because any kind of tropical system, even a tropical storm, can cause some flooding problems if it moves inland and stalls for any length of time. So that's something we'll be watching out there. Again, Daisy, I see you out there this morning. Again, appreciate you checking out the channel here. Again, I appreciate you guys having supported the channel, and we will see you guys. I normally do these Monday through Friday. Probably will do this through the weekend because of the tropical system there. So look for my updates throughout the weekend. And if we do have a landfalling system going into next week, which now will kind of lean more toward Tuesday, if it doesn't stall, we will plan to do some live coverage on the storm as well. Haven't had a lot of opportunities, which is good. We had 2 last year, actually had 3 last year, but really haven't had a lot to talk about tropic-wise as far as doing some live team coverage here on the tropics, and we may get one here next week. We'll see. All right, that is y'all's update for now. You guys take it easy, be good, stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow. I will do another one tomorrow, and we'll talk to you then. You guys have a great day.